Metroid Prime 4 supports the HDR system level calibration on the Nintendo Switch 2, and on top, when we go into the settings menu, we have a brightness setting to adjust the picture. Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Let's cut this very short and let's start talking about how to set up HDR in Metroid Prime 4 in the correct way. And we're starting with the HDR system level calibration. So all what you need to do is you go to display, and we're going to talk about this setting here and why you should actually keep this always off a little bit later, okay? But all what you have to do is you scroll down, you go to adjust HDR, and then just follow the instruction on the screen. By the way, they added a new option, show values, which is nice to have, but actually a little bit useless, because this setting or this menu here or the settings are actually working pretty well, because right now my LG-G4 is set to HDR, and this symbol here disappears exactly with 1500 nits, okay? So that means the HDR system level calibration actually works pretty well, because probably very hard to see from my camera to capture 1500 nits, and this is perfectly gone, okay? So the next screen is actually a little bit more interesting, because not all people know that we can actually set up a brightness setting here, adjust brightness. All what we need to do is press Y, and then this screen comes up, and this is responsible for the average picture brightness paper white setting in all the HDR games so far. So all the games I have played so far, yes, correct, supporting this menu, okay? So what I will do, or what is my recommendation here, because it's always a little bit hard, but I recommend go to the left side to the lowest setting, and then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This should give you roughly around 250 nits paper white setting. And yes, I get it. It's most likely not correct for all the screens out there, but for the G4 I found 250 nits is actually really good, okay? But if you like to change it, keep in mind every click, and it doesn't matter if you reduce or increase it, is 25 nits, okay? So again, you go to the absolute lowest point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then you have roughly around 250 nits. And now let's talk about the brightness setting what we have in a game. And when you start the game for the first time, brightness is set to 50, and I personally found this way too bright, because the picture looks washed out. Black level floor, and yes, I show you some graphs a little bit later, but the black level floor is even more raised than with my recommended setting. So this is not ideal, and contrast wise this doesn't look good, because again it's just way too bright. So my recommendation is actually try to find a setting close to 25. By the way, 25 is almost the same when this symbol disappears. So it also of course depends on your TV screen or monitor, but find a setting close to 25, because then you have a very great contrast. By the way, specular highlights are the same brightness as before with setting 50, okay? So you will not lose any brightness in specular highlights. All what you gain actually is more contrast, because, and it may appear very dark on the camera, but believe me, this absolutely looks gorgeous at the moment. Great contrast, dynamic range is fantastic. Look at the great lights here, and look at this, I love those effects. So this is exactly how it should look like. So again, if you think this is a little bit too much, 25, because it may appear maybe a little bit too dark, then just increase it a little bit more. I haven't played here actually, I have no idea where I am, but I can tell you with lights off, HDR enabled, and 25 in terms of the brightness setting, I'm actually pretty happy on my LG G4. So let's talk about the HDR quality in Metroid Prime 4 with my recommended settings. Brightness set to 25, and yeah, the HDR system level calibration is adjusted to the LG G4. That means HDR is enabled, and we have 1500 nits in specular highlights. So are we actually talking about proper native HDR10 here? No, we don't, and it's very simple to prove. First of all, you will experience some, or you will see some cutscenes transitioning into a white full widescreen. And what I learned is that this full widescreen is also displayed in the maximum peak brightness what you have set on your Nintendo Switch console. That means if you're lucky and your display can actually show or display 5000 nits and your Nintendo Switch is set to 5000 nits, this full widescreen will be displayed in 5000 nits and will kill your eyes. So this is bad, but this is one of the examples and one of the proof that we're actually talking about our SDR to HDR conversion here. Also, most of the HUD symbols on the screen and here as well, but you can't see this because of this layer here, are actually displayed in 1500 nits as well. You can see this here. There is a lot of very, very bright objects on the screen. Even right now we have just this here. So the rest is HUD symbols and stuff like that. So no, we don't have proper HDR10 here, but the result is, in my opinion, not bad. It's one of the better HDRs I have seen on a Nintendo console. It can be better, honestly, it can be better, but it's a good start and I honestly like it much better than SDR. So what about the HDR black level floor? And I have to admit, it is very tricky to analyze the correct HDR black level floor in this game because I have the feeling, or I think, that the upscaler is actually messing up the analyzer on the lower end. Okay, so upper end is pretty fine, but you can even see here that there's something dodgy, and this is usually the case when there is some upscaler in use. I have seen this many times on the PC as well, and as soon I turn off FSR or DLSS, this graph looks much cleaner. But that's the case, I can't tell you. What I can tell you is that with brightness set to 50, which is the standard factory setting, this right now looks absolutely washed out. This right now is brightness set to 25, and I hope my camera is actually capturing this. This looks absolutely amazing. This is very dark, but also you have this absolute fantastic specular highlights and it looks gorgeous in my opinion. Look at this. This is so bright, 1500 nits. And here's another example why it's just SDR to HDR, because there are literally no details in this very bright spot. But honestly, it's just complaining on a very high level. It just looks great because we have a very great contrast, very dark here, and this very bright spot. So it is really good looking in HDR. But HDR could be better, I said it already, because also in regards to the HDR color space, and right now we have 40% DCI-P3, but that's the fact because almost everything is dark, and very dark colors are actually considered as DCI-P or BT2020. So in normal brightness level or in very colorful level, we're still talking most of the time BT 709, unfortunately. But again, I find, or I think, the HDR implementation in this game is pretty decent, and I don't want to spoil it too much, honestly, but let's just watch this. This looks amazing in my opinion. Contrast-wise, high dynamic range in general looks fantastic. So for me, a clear recommendation, if you have a proper TV screen or monitor, then play this game in HDR. And now let's talk about why I think you should never use the Nintendo Switch in portable mode with HDR enabled. And I'm talking about this setting here, console screen HDR output. Can you focus on this, please, camera? Anyway, console screen HDR output should be always off. That's my recommendation. The reason for this is very simple. First of all, this LCD screen is not capable of showing proper HDR because, first of all, it's just 400 nits maximum peak brightness, okay? That's all. And then second of all, and that's the worst part, we have no proper backlight, okay? So there are no dimming zones, we have just edge backlight, and this is terrible for HDR content. So again, do me the favor, enjoy this screen in SDR, do not turn this on because HDR on the screen looks worse than SDR. Okay, my friends, so that's it for this video. I say thank you very much for watching me. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And I now continue playing this game because in my opinion, it's pretty good. I was waiting for this game for a very long time. I do like it. I like the art design. I still think the graphic is actually great, fantastic for considering we have just this little piece of hardware here. This looks absolutely mind-blowing in my opinion. And The Nintendo Switch 2 controller is anyway in a complete different league in my opinion compared to Xbox and PlayStation 5 controller, but that's just me, okay? Again, leave a like, share and subscribe, and put in the comment section what you think about this game, what you think about the HDR implementation, and I see you